Hey everyone, I'm Patrick, founding engineer at Continue, and I'd like to show you how I vibe code responsibly. At Continue, we like to think of vibe coding more like sculpture work. You start off with high-powered tools like the Continue CLI that allow you to generate huge amounts of code really quickly. And this is kind of like a sculptor taking a jackhammer to a block of marble. You can carve off your ideas really quickly, get a sense of the solution space, iterate on things without caring too much about the underlying code quality at this point. And that's usually where the conversation around vibe coding tends to end. But at Continue, we take it a step further with the process we call chiseling. So just like a sculptor will trade in the jackhammer for precision tools like a chisel, you trade in the CLI for precision tools in the IDE like autocomplete and chat that allow you to go into the code, make sure things are following best practices and principles, and ultimately take ownership for every line of code that you ship. Let me show you an example of how we do this in practice. Great, we're now in the terminal and I'll launch continue via the cn command, a nice shorthand. And here we are. The continue CLI allows you to work with any model that you want. In this case, you can see that I've selected Claude Sonnet 4.5. And there's also custom agents that you can work with. You can see that I'm using one called Awesome Models that we use on the team. And you can also work with any MCP tools that you want. In this case, we won't be using any MCPs, so I'll just get started. We also have access to your code base, so you can quickly reference files through the CLI. And after entering, you can see the agent immediately gets to work starting to explore the code base. So it's using a bunch of tools that we have to go through and get an understanding of how this feature that we want to build works. You can see that it's starting to output code right away. In these scenarios, I'm usually staying quite involved in reading the code, jumping between the IDE to understand things, but also sometimes I'll just let it run in the background. And this is where chiseling becomes really important when you're not quite as actively involved in the monitoring of the agent, especially as models get better and faster. So we can see that it's finished now, but I noticed at one point that it output some code that I don't think should be inlined and would benefit from being pulled out into a standalone function. So this is where we'll now jump into the IDE to do that chiseling. Now we are in the VS Code IDE extension, and this is where personally I'm much more familiar. So I'll use the command palette to navigate things quickly, Command F to find the code that we were referencing. And this is that function that looks like it's inline in a use effect. And I think it should instead be in a util file where it's a little easier to isolate. So I will use the Command L shortcut that we have in Continue that adds that section of code to the chat sidebar. And I'll write a quick prompt instructing the agent to pull it into a standalone function. And this agent in many ways is the same set of tools that we have available in the CLI. It's just much more tightly integrated into the IDE. So you can see again that it's recommending that we create a new file and put this helper in there, and I'll accept that tool call. And now you can see that we have the new file that we created with the code cleaned up. And now I'll switch over to the running test instance of our extension that we have that's running this new code. And here's the feature. It looks pretty good to me. It's using the same styling and same inputs that we have in the rest of the settings page. And I'll enter the hex value for red so we can see if this works. And great, it looks like it worked. So if you noticed, the toggles were originally green and now they're set to the new hex value of red that we set. So it looks like the agent did a good job and the code is now cleaned up as well. That's it for the demo. Hope you enjoyed it. AI allows us to build in hours what used to take days, but that speed without commensurate code quality is really just an accumulation of tech debt at breakneck speeds. The CLI makes your code work, but chiseling is ultimately what makes the code right. And that combination is what we at Continue believe the future of software development will look like. Start chiseling today. Your future self and your team will thank you.